bunch of new stuff on JP and El Paso, just going crazy.
Lots of money floating around.
There is.
Go ahead and call the meeting to order. If we could all silence our cell phones, stand and face the flag.
Pledge allegiance
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, approval of agenda. Has everybody had a chance to look at the agenda?
I'll make a motion that we approve the agenda for January 4th, 2022 as printed.
Okay, we have a first and a second. Larry?
Yeah. Aye.
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 The agenda has been approved. Next item is approval of minutes from the October 5th. I don't think that's accurate.
December 7th.
December 7th.
Yes, December 7th, 2021 Planning Commission meeting.
I didn't see any corrections. It was quite lengthy, but I didn't notice anything that was wrong with it.
Yeah, just some typos on my name. I noticed that. It's AR some places and ER in others. Other than that, I think the agenda looked, or the minutes looked. Okay.
Why is there manager under Mark's name and above Larry's on the minutes? Is that just a typo? It lists members present. And it's Byron, Mark, and then it says manager, and then Larry Brown, Larry Baker, John Hamrick, and me. Just weird. I don't think it makes any difference. Yeah. Did you move to approve?
Oh, I think
No,
that means Micah.
no. I make a motion.
Oh, it's
that we-
supposed to be, okay.
I'll make a motion that we approve the minutes for December 7th, 21 as printed with the exception of two items. What were the
Spelling.
wording for, under Byron, instead of
Oh, I
manager,
see.
it should be chairman. And there's a couple of,
Well, I see what happened. Your second line skips is your name, Joanne Cole, and then office, and then it skipped to the next line. That's where the manager came from, so. Okay, I'll second whatever you said.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to approve the minutes. All in favor? Carter?
Aye.
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 Motion is approved. We have no unfinished business, new business. We're going to start with election of officers. Do I have any nominations from the commissioners for the office of chairman?
I nominate Mark. Is it Masser? Macer? Masser.
Macer.
Masser.
Do I have any other nominations for the officer of chairman? Okay, all in favor of Mark Macer being the chairman?
Aye.
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 Aye. You okay with that?
I am okay with that.
Good.
Good.
Thank you.
We'll try it. I believe the next office is vice chairman. What is it actually called? Is it vice chairman?
It is.
Chairman.
Vice chairman. Do I have any nominations for office of vice chairman?
And we have secretary also? Yeah. I nominate John Hamrick.
John? You nominated John?
Yeah, you want, that's fine. I'd be fine with that.
Do I have a second to that nomination?
I'll second it.
Do I have any other nominations for the position of vice chairman? With that being said, all in favor of John Hamrick being vice chairman? Larry?
Aye.
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 It's going to be pretty simple. And secretary?
Can we renominate Larry?
Yes.
Well, I mean, that's a valid question.
Yeah.
Yeah. I will second that nomination. Are there any other nominations for the position of secretary? Then all in favor of Larry Brown to the position of secretary, Larry?
Aye.
I'm sorry, Gardner.
Aye.
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 I don't believe we have a treasurer.
Oh, I was going to say, I don't know.
We don't have any money. All right, moving on to the next item of new business. MS 21008 Wolf Subdivision. Matt?
There's the man.
Good afternoon. We are requesting a minor subdivision. This is located on R Street in Penrose. It's 2 lots. The Lot 1 will be 4.8 acres, Lot 2 will be 4.5 acres. When we first started this, the lots were vacant. Since then, they have got a building permit to build a house on Lot 1, which is kind of, the house is located kind of in the middle, kind of the north side of that lot. So it doesn't cause any problems there. All the utilities are adjacent, and we did request a waiver of the drainage. The county engineer reviewed that, basically said, okay, but we still need some sort of a drainage when you build. So when the building permits come around, we'll have to have an engineer do a drainage report at that time. Other than that, this was originally called Wolf Subdivision. We had to rename it to DJW Subdivision because there was already a wolf. So it's actually called DJW Subdivision. Other than that, if you have any questions.
I think we'll go to the Micah's report and then.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Comments, well, like Matt said, the planning, the project engineer did state that he does recommend the motion for the waiver, and that if they do decide to develop on the site, that they will need to do the report. The other is from Fremont County Department of Transportation, that Lot 2 will need a access permit. Lot 1 does have an access permit. And from the Department of Public Health and Environment, that since there is no commercial applications, there's no requirements from them. And as for my department, we do approve this.
Commissioners.
No questions.
Does that have to be, permitted prior to construction, or does it just have to be when the building permit is issued?
Yeah, normally it's when we go in for a building permit. At the time of subdivision, we don't know where the driveway's gonna go. So typically, it's not a requirement for a subdivision. It's requirement for when you start to build. You know, you're gonna start doing the driveway, you get that access permit at that time for the building permit.
So do we need to change the wording for that contingency item, instead of, an access permit for Lot 2 when building permit is issued?
Right, it should be removed as a contingency anyways, because.
That's what I was thinking.
The county regulations already require it when you go get a building permit. I believe a lot of the misunderstanding there is when the Department of Transportation reviews these, they acknowledge kind of everything. At some point, they'll need to get an access permit. And unfortunately, it's just not clear when they make their statements, and so it's put on the subdivision. We always ask for that to be removed because it doesn't make any sense, so.
So then we can just take that off as a contingency item then, Micah?
Yes, sir. Like Matt explained, it's for whenever they do build on it, they're gonna need to know where the driveway goes and everything else, so.
Great, okay. I mean, other than that, it looks like a pretty straightforward situation here. I don't know what else to ask, except, okay.
What are we vacating an old plat and issuing a new plat?
Correct. Yep.
Right.
That's what I thought, just checking.
And on the drainage report, a drainage report wasn't required for the building of the house on Lot 1?
I'm not sure what they required for that building permit. I wasn't a part of that. My understanding is they had engineers involved in all that aspects, so that should have been hopefully taken care of at that point. I can't answer to that.
Okay. But this drainage report concerns just the current subdivision.
Right.
Perfect.
And these are such large lots. I mean, it's, you always look at them and, drainage, it's almost unnecessary. But this lot actually lends itself to the southeast corner on Lot 2. There's actually kind of a natural ponding area. So it kind of naturally takes care of itself now. So, I mean, I don't think there's any worries, so.
Okay.
I'll make a motion to approve MS 21-008 minus the contingency of access permit.
Second.
With the name change off of MS 2108 from Wolf Subdivision 2,
You want that in it?
should that be in
Yeah.
it? I would think
I
so.
would imagine we need to change the name on here to, sorry, what was it?
DJW
DJW.
Subdivision.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'll second it. Or was it already seconded?
I had seconded.
Okay,
All right.
he seconded it.
Okay, I have a motion and a second to approve MS 21-008 with the name change and
Chair,
removing the contingency.
And I have some discussion on that.
Okay.
Don't we need to include in the motion that a drainage plan will be submitted at the appropriate time or prior to construction?
Yeah, normally we'll put a note on the plat, so when it's recorded, it'll stipulate that when a building permit is applied for, a drainage plan will be required at that time, so.
So that does need to be stipulated or not?
To be
Does that
clear,
need
I
to be a
think it should be.
contingency, Micah?
No.
Or is that part of the building department's purview?
So, I believe that's part of the building department. When they apply for that, there's going to be a review for that drainage around the building and everything else. So,
Micah, isn't it that, so one of the review items that your office does is whether there's a drainage plan, a current drainage plan or not. So I think it's a requirement for the subdivision to have a drainage plan. Is that your understanding, Matt?
Or an avenue for it. And so
An
in this
avenue
case,
for it,
you're
yes.
right. So if somebody submits for a building permit, it'll go to the planning and zoning office, they'll pull the plat, and that'll be the only record notation that there's a requirement for a drainage plan. And so that's, you'll note it on your
Yes.
review and kick it back. So it needs to be on the plat, because that'll be the only things of record.
So I think that means it does need to be in the motion.
So should that be a contingency item on all of these subdivision approvals, or?
Not all of them, in this case, we asked for a waiver, and so we kind of chased that down. A lot of times you'll have a drainage report that'll take care of all those issues. So it'll be, on a case-by-case basis that you'll need to review that.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so I would see yes, that, would you amend your motion to include the contingency for the drainage report?
Okay, to include a contingency for a drainage report at time of building permit
Exactly.
issuance.
Yep, exactly.
Okay.
Okay, and Larry, would you still second that? Yes. As amended? Okay, Larry?
Aye.
Aye?
Aye.
Aye, have fun.
All right, thank
Thanks,
you.
guys.
Good luck.
And without any further business,
I wasn't sure to whom I should hand this cute little paper.
I'm sorry, I'll take that.
Oh,
I wasn't sure if it should be the nice lady or the chairperson, then there wasn't a chairperson. Who became the chairperson?
You want to be a volunteer here?
A little bit of, well, go ahead and step up to the microphone.
Okay, I have a couple snippets of paper, because I kind of want to provide each of you with some information about the
Thank you.
situation at hand, which is that there's a situation that it doesn't seem like we've been given enough information about what is happening regarding a Black Hills transmission line that has been approved, but if it'll give your brains a few minutes to digest the information, I'll read it to you quickly, because I know sometimes I need a few minutes to digest some information. So, we're writing to you, or presenting to you, about a proposed 115,000 volt high voltage transmission line that is slated to be erected disturbingly close to our house. Firstly, we weren't informed by any Black Hills Corporation representatives that this was proposed, and we were actually unaware of it until after the property next to ours had been sold. If our mother had not purchased a plot of land nearby for construction of her house, we wouldn't have even known about the sale. And then upon discovering the purchase of by Black Hills, which was January of last year, we began inquiring as to the purpose for their purchase. And after extensive searching, we finally found contact information by perusing permit documentation at the Fremont County Planning and Zoning Department. The phone number for the Black Hills representative was no longer active. So we reached out to the contractor listed on the the substation in Penrose, Bo Cochran. And he was very kind, and he got us in touch with the person at Black Hills, Seth Botelier. And we spoke to him on August 2nd of last year, and he gave us a bunch of information regarding the proposed locations of structures that now seems to be inaccurate information, and additional information on how the forthcoming line was communicated to nearby landowners, but that wasn't exactly accurate because we spoke to all of our neighbors and no one had heard anything about this. And actually, when talking to one of our neighbors about this, we found out that there were Black Hills survey people that trespassed on his property to get to the as yet to be purchased Black Hills property to evaluate it. And what isn't pointed out in here is I mentioned that to Seth and he said, no one was there. So less happiness. And then after doing some research about what is going on right now, where if Black Hills hasn't secured additional SRU permits, which is what the snippet that I handed to you mentions, for construction on this property, or if these permits are forthcoming or pending approval, then the fact that they've already begun construction on this line is pretty concerning, because they've on at least one occasion used explosives that my wife and I happen to be home, incredibly loud. I mean, we live close to Fort Carson, so we hear loud stuff occasionally. This dwarfs those significantly. And we saw a pretty big cloud of smoke coming up, and I sent a message to one of my neighbors to say, it looks like that might have been on your property. Are you doing something? He didn't know anything about it. And then where it was, he and I talked later, and he said that is where there is an access road to the area. So in the event that there is an emergency that one needs to get out and this road isn't available or that road isn't available, there's another one. Anyway, they've also been using some pretty big equipment to make a road or gain access to something Haven't asked questions specifically, don't actually know exactly, but I see it a lot, I hear it a lot. It's on their property, but either way, that seems to be a small issue. These issues aside, the urgency of our contacting you is predicated by discovering that one of the proposed pole locations appears to be less than 250 feet from our actual house, and roughly 90 feet from the property line. And if you stand and look at it, it looks a lot closer, like horizontally, but it's on a hill, so map distortion probably makes it look like it's about 90 feet. Immaterial, sort of. And this is actually the most concerning because our backyard is in between where this pole is going to be and where the house is. And that's actually where our small person really likes playing, very much enjoys being outside. It's really nice to see. And my wife has a hopefully soon to be burgeoning garden that has taken us a while to get growing. And we very much look forward to our small person being able to enjoy playing out here for a long time. Like, that's why we live here. And initially, when we heard about the frustration with the Penrose people and the new line coming through, we went to a couple of their small meetings and listened, and it seemed like the biggest problem was the substation. And so we're not specifically opposed to the transmission line, but we're kind of opposed to it being right outside our backyard. And because there's no clear documentation as to the health, noise pollution, electrical, structural hazards. I mean, as you can see from the footnotes, there's a bunch of stuff, and don't really want to overwhelm you because if you do any looking, you can find a significant amount of stuff. And this is just a few key points that seem appropriate. And not just the existence of the pole, but also actually going through constructing it, because it's on the edge of a hill. And my wife and I are very sure that you receive lots of concern letters from lots of people, but hopefully you'll empathize with us regarding this particular situation and look into the construction and the permits that may or may not have been filed for appropriately, as well as the distance of a proposed construction from things that already exist, and how Black Hills hasn't really solicited input from surrounding property owners, which would be paramount for all of us because we're pretty much all directly affected. And some footnotes, as you probably see, but then a little bit of graphical information to make it easy for you to not have to envision, because the first is, you can see our house, and it's 160, 170 feet to where that red line is, which is the property line. And that little blue piece, roughly 90 feet, but again, map distortion, maybe closer to 70, but I mean, if we're talking in a perfectly straight line. But that does give you an idea of it's pretty close to our property, and really uncomfortably close to our house. And so the one point that my wife had mentioned when we found out by looking outside our house and seeing, oh, there's a little flag thing on one of those trees up there. Huh. And so we did a little bit of looking and found that that's pretty much exactly where the proposed line is. And I mean, if you have a little bit of quick reasoning and analysis, you can make an educated guess that that's probably where they want the pole to go. Plus, you can also see, if you're within visible distance, where they're doing some work on a distant ridge. And it really just seems like their evaluation of placement lacks some amount of effort of either input from current residents or everybody, which is what they're supposed to be doing as far as we understand. And it's kind of alarming that no one that I spoke to even knew anything about this line going up, aside from they'd heard that there was a substation happening. They see the the start of construction, but no one has talked to us. And that's the most alarming thing, that when I spoke to Seth, it's like, well, we're open to new information, and no, we didn't send anybody there. We actually surveyed it with helicopter. I mean, not going to call your misrepresentation, but facts seem to suggest otherwise. And the fact that we communicated with other people. He says he has a sheet that says we communicated with people and various check marks, positives, negatives, reds, greens, as to responses we got. Well, no one that I know. And I know people who've been there double-digit years, and we've only been there 4 years, and people that have been there 10 years. No. So it's not an issue of we bought it before or after communications were attempted, ability to reach us isn't there, what have you. So it's,
Well, I sympathize with what you're, and I'll certainly look at this. Did not come up to the Planning Commission. While the substation did, and that was approved, I believe, last year, the placement of the high voltage lines is not in the purview of the Planning Commission.
that was one of the things that my wife had said, is she didn't see anything clearly indicating that anything about the lines for the substation were mentioned in the permits for the substation. And the only thing I can think of is, I don't know, when planning a community, you need roads in and roads out. Well, when planning a substation, you need wires in and wires out.
I understand that. I couldn't answer that. Micah, can you
So,
answer that?
Yes, I believe what he's talking about is, we've recently received a application from Black Hills. It's the Black Hills Desert Cove application. We are in literally the very beginning stages of reviewing the application and everything else. If it goes through, that's when notifications will be going out to neighbors and everything else. According to them, in our pre-application meetings, they have contacted some individuals. They've actually purchased some of the land as well. So we're still in, they're still in the early stages of this.
I realize that, but the thing that we find kind of alarming is they wouldn't be constructing like this if they didn't think that the application were a foregone conclusion. And I know I always preach to my wife and anyone else who asks that always assume incompetence or overlooking or mistakes before malice. I have a hard time following that preaching with this, just because of how Black Hills has gone about this particular instance. Like, the reason that the dude found out about the trespassing on his property is because they got stuck in the mud, going not on the road and the well-used land. And I'm sure if I asked him, he would tell me exactly where. I think he said he even took a picture of it. So if you're doing something that you know people are going to be opposed to, you're probably going to do it in a way that they don't know you're doing it. And at the
That's
same
an
time,
assumption.
and at the same time, the significant amount of negative reaction that they got from the substation would probably have encouraged them to lean more closely on the let's do this with as little attention as possible. But that's why I have a hard time following is it malicious or is it accidental? I don't know. I can't come down and say definitively one way or the other. But it does cause one to raise one's eyebrows as to what is your objective. If your objective is to not ruffle feathers, then I would think you would try to be polite to the people who currently occupy said area and not try to make it seem like they don't exist or they don't matter. And it's more of it's hearing that this is early makes me feel much better about it, because our significant concern was that it's either been passed or something. So that is actually incredibly encouraging, and I'm Thank you very
Micah?
much.
We
Micah,
literally,
Micah, this application that you just received,
yes.
what is that for? Is that for placement of
It's a
of the lines going in?
SRU for the lines. It's going to go from the North Penrose Transfer Station all the way down to the Pueblo County line, where they will then pick it up and go into Pueblo with it.
So his concerns would be directed or addressed at that particular point, once we get it to us, whenever that's gonna be. Is that correct?
Yes. So again, we had our pre-application meeting in December, the beginning of December. We received the application about mid-December, was it?
Yeah, mid-December.
About mid-December. So it's with our consultant, they're reviewing it. Our land technician, he just went over everything. There's a long list of contingencies, or I'm sorry, deficiencies that they need to meet before we even bring it to the planning board. So there's still quite a bit of work for them to do.
They have to procure an easement to do this even, don't they?
Yes, sir. So, again, from our pre-application meeting, they have gotten a lot of approval from property owners, and the ones that they haven't been, they've been buying up the property. There's still some that I believe is in question. It has not reached my desk personally, so I really can't say. I'm just going by with what the pre-application meeting was about,
That makes sense.
okay?
Well, thank you for bringing this to our attention, and I agree with you, they probably are putting the cart ahead of the horse, but at some point, this will come before the commission, and please come back and voice your opinions when it's in front of us and we can actually vote on it, I guess.
Yeah,
But thank you.
We had peeked at the agendas for some recent meetings just to see if this looked like it had been addressed recently, but I'm guessing we hadn't reached December, and if it were on the agenda for December, then that would explain why we didn't see it, because we saw one in September and thought, okay, this is when things were addressed. But, yeah. So
Thank you.
we'll check the agenda to figure out when it's going to be on so that it is pertinent, and then our concerns will be much more apropos.
Yeah, and I believe you'll probably be notified because notifications will be sent out.
Yes. If you're that close to it, you'll be getting notification for the public hearings and everything else.
Super.
Okay.
That's the most important thing is the initial of seeing this, like, if this is that close to being constructed, maybe we missed something, or maybe something missed us. And so it was, let's make our concerns known as quickly as possible so that something bad doesn't happen without us being vigilant of it.
I understand. Yes, sir.
Super.
Thank you.
Thank you very, very much. Yes.
All right, unless there's any more business, we'll adjourn.